But yeah, let's begin officially. So, hi everyone, this is the late edition of the Academy Gaming Hour. Right now, we are doing videos and interviews and gameplay of games related to the upcoming D.I.C.E Awards. And with us today, we're very fortunate to have 17 Bits Jake. How are you doing?
Hey, great. Good morning
Good
or
morning.
evening.
First off, congratulations, of course. You're up for a Dice Brite Award for Galak-Z. How are you feeling? How's the team feeling about all the accolades and all the praise you guys have been receiving so far?
I mean, it just makes us so happy. We worked so hard on this project for so long, and we knew it was a great project, but to see that, we're getting a lot of praise and sort of recognition from the outside kind of does make it all worth it. So we're very thankful, and we're just very happy about the whole thing.
Very cool. And for someone that doesn't know what the game is per se, can you describe what the game exactly is? And we're playing it in the background, of course.
So it's 17-bit kind of stands for 16-bit gameplay principles applied to the modern age. So it's our take on the classic spaceship shooter. So it's got a lot of the tropes and sort of the pieces that you would need for something like that, but it's much more sort of a modern game in terms of its design decisions, I suppose. It's a freestyle sort of world. It's all physics driven, so it's a very sort of organic sort of combat simulator. The AI is really kind of I would put it up against anything out there. We worked with an outside company called Sentient
Mm.
that is sort of an AI specialist, and so it's on par with Halo or Far Cry, anything like that. And the gameplay is kind of based on those. I really love the original Halo. I mean, I love all the Halos, but the first one I just played hundreds of hours of.
Mm.
And so this is about that kind of really organic, fluid, flowing combat and kind of getting into that flow state with the game where you've got this absolute control. The controls are perfect, and everything's just very physical and heavy. The lasers have they're not immediate. Like it takes a while to line up your shots and stuff. And as you kind of spend more and more time with the game, you become really just there's a level of connection with it that I think is hard to find in a lot of those other shooting games, just because there's so much more to it. I mean, it really is sort of the best of modern gaming mixed with the classic genres.
Mm-mm. I guess we're going to take both fan questions and our question and integrate them as we're going along here. Uh, one question being asked about the game itself. Ag is asking about the Vita version, but any plans to bring it back?
Um, we're kind of working really hard on the mobile version right now, and we're doing a lot of optimizations and sort of simplifying a lot of the systems. It could happen, but the it's still kind of on the back seat. I mean, we've got just such a tiny team. We lost one of our main engineers. And we're kind of really scrambling to get by right now. So
Mm.
it's not likely unless the mobile port would work really well as a Vita port that wouldn't take a whole lot more work. It's not completely dead, but it's kind of on the real back burner right now.
Mm. And talking about like being in a really small team, I believe you worked in Sega before. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was at Sega here in Japan for about 4.5 years during the Dreamcast era.
Very cool. And so, what is the big difference, obviously, from working at a bigger place like Sega and now working with a very smaller team?
Well, there's a lot of differences. Back then I was just sort of a peon. I was an art grunt. I had a great time, and I had a fantastic team. Some of the best memories of my life, for sure. But now I get to make my own games, and so that just in itself is very different. And we've got a crack crew. It's a small team, but everyone's very good at their jobs, and we really like what we do. So it's a lot. It's even more fun now because we get to sort of design what we want to make, and then we get to kind of sit down and make it. And most people that work in games, have a dream of making their own games, and so we've gotten to the point where we can kind of do that, and it's a real special thing. I mean, there's a lot of differences too, just between the team size. A big team, obviously, you've got more resources, you've got more,
Mm.
just sort of resources behind you the whole way. Like we're very small, we're just kind of skimming by, just making it happen. But
Yeah.
it's a lot of fun. So they're both great, and but I am happy to be doing it at small scale now, and I don't think I'd go back to a big scale development again.
That's cool. And we're seeing a lot of that, of course, as you said, from like Undertale to Her Story to, Galak-Z, these smaller type games really gaining a lot of, being made, I guess, is what I'm trying to generally say. What is the biggest differences you've seen from the time you've worked at Sega in the beginning to, I guess, now? How are games transformed, or how has gaming transformed in your
Well, I
eyes?
think the democratization of game creation. I mean, back then you had to have a publisher. You needed to have, lots of money to put up all the upfront costs for publishing discs and getting them into distribution and, covering the press and all this kind of stuff. Now, you've got streamers playing your games live everywhere. You've got people, making games in Unity, making games in Unreal. With the opening up of the Steam store, the iOS store, the Android store, pretty much anybody can make indie games these days, and PC So there's a flood of stuff. I mean, there's more games now than probably ever before, and anybody can make them, which is difficult for guys like us because
Hmm.
there's so much stuff out there to wade through. Like there's just so many games these days, and it's tough for everyone to to have enough sales to kind of really continue because there's just so much content out there these days.
Hmm.
So it's a very different state than before, where you had a limited handful of things that were all kind of really high budget, and um, there was just a lot less to choose from back then. So I think the numbers were higher. I mean, I think there's more gamers than ever now, but there's also more content than ever. So,
Hmm.
getting through all that and kind of most of the stores are still kind of trying to figure out a way to kind of bring the best content to the front without sort of leaving everybody out. It's a tough thing. It's still very evolving right now.
Hmm. For someone trying to get into the space, whether they're indie or whatever they're trying to do in the game space, what would you really suggest to them or give them a tip in terms of what you've learned from your experience with Galak-Z so far?
I could write a book. Um, Gosh, I don't know. I mean, I guess the most important thing is just kind of, if you're just getting into it, like don't expect you're going to get rich off of it. Like try to do it on the side, nights and weekends. That's how we started the company with Skulls of the Shogun. A good year that was basically largely unfunded and sort of just working nights and weekends, stuff like that. You don't expect to get rich and just kind of make it a passion project. Make what you want to make and start as small as you can, and do something as rich as you can in as small of a space as you can, because there's always more to it than you could ever imagine. I mean, it's just there's so many elements to pulling a game all the way together and like tying all the loose ends up and shipping it. So start small, stay true to yourself, and just go for it.
Cool. And just focusing on the game, of course, going back to it a little bit, you talked about a lot of inspirations from Halo and to obviously very anime influences. One of your producers, I believe, said the gameplay is inspired by new wave roguelikes. Could you kind of explain what that means?
When we were designing the game, I was playing a lot of Rogue Legacy and Spelunky and sort of this latest generation of sort of the roguelike likes, I guess,
Mm.
is what they're calling them these days. But the idea that I grew up playing arcade games, and I loved playing all the old arcade game shooters and stuff like that. And that idea of just sitting down and getting an enriching experience every time you play, as opposed to kind of running through the game, finishing it, and feeling like you're done with it. I wanted something that would have a really long skill ramp up that you could get better and better at. And no matter how much time you had to give to it on any given day, you would come away with a really rewarding, sort of exciting experience. And so it was really just inspired by those classic arcade games and that idea of like putting in your quarter and sitting down and being entertained for a couple minutes no matter what.
Mm.
I think that really was kind of where this came from. And the idea that even for us as designers, creating this organic ecosystem where you can just, even me who designed most of the rooms and like all the enemies and all this kind of stuff, I can go in there every time and have a fresh experience and not know what I'm going to come up against, and come up with some sort of new combination of factors that's going to make it a really kind of new, engaging experience for me every single time I play. And as a designer, working on the same game for 2, 3 years, whatever,
Mm.
it's such a joy to be like, hey, I don't know what I'm getting into. I don't know what I'm going to come across today. And
Yeah.
to constantly be challenged by new stuff is just super, super rewarding. And I can't imagine ever doing a game not like that again.
Awesome. Someone asked in the chat, local multiplayer, any plans for that in the future?
Oh, I would love to. It's just always been a time thing. Like we're down to just a couple of our core engineers now. We've got so much on our plate as it is. Um, I haven't given up hope, though. I mean, if as soon as we get some breathing space, I don't think it would be a whole lot of work to put in. I would love to do it. So, I mean, I'm not promising anything, but if it was at all possible, I would love to get that in somehow, someday.
Awesome. And then talking a little bit about game design, I'm curious about your philosophy and how you create games. Can you give me a little bit of inspiration in terms of how you work in designing a game? Do you think of the story first? Do you think of the level design? What's your process?
I'm not a story guy.
Mm.
In games, I don't. I mean, a lot of people will argue with me, and they're not wrong.
Mm.
For me personally, though, it's all about the game. It's about the gameplay. Again, I grew up during the kind of the dawn of video gaming, and I played all the original arcade games and grew up with the old Ataris and Commodores and all that stuff. And so, gaming to me has always been about this engaging sort of interaction with this thing. And so I'm always a mechanics guy first, mechanics, and then as an artist, I was a career artist for 20 years doing games. The aesthetic and all that stuff is also kind of as important to me. So I always start with the aesthetic, like what is the world, what are we doing there, how does it feel? What are we doing on a moment to moment basis? And then I kind of, once that stuff is built up, you can kind of structure a narrative around that. But the narrative to me is always sort of
Hmm.
the last chunk, I guess.
Got it. Another question. What is the difference between doing game development in Japan versus in the US, to your knowledge?
Um, Boy, that's another one I could write a book about. Just the Japanese culture and the American or the Western cultures are so, vastly different. Their whole methodologies and approach to everything is kind of very, very different. I spent 4.5 years at a big Japanese studio at Sega, so I learned a lot about what it's like to work with Japanese and to work, doing Japanese game methodology. And as long as I spent a long time in the West too, so
Hmm.
I mean, there's a ton of differences. I don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
Um, I think I'm sure it's changing, but back then, the Japanese would kind of tend to want to redo the whole project. They would like start off from ground zero and make the whole engine and kind of start off the whole thing again. Where the Western ways, I feel like more sort of focused on reusing stuff and like reusing tech and like using the same engine and building on that same engine. I think it has changed since those days for sure. But that was definitely one of the big takeaways I had, where I was like, wow, we're going to really kind of start this whole thing again. And but there's a lot of similarities too. Finding the core of the game, coming up with the prototype. Um, God, it's a world of difference. I mean, at our
Yeah.
studio here, we're in Kyoto, Japan now, and there's 9 of us, and we have one Japanese guy,
Yeah.
we've got one Canadian guy, and 3 British guys, and the rest are Americans. So it's kind of a big hodgepodge of development here. Um, but even the Japanese guy has spent some time in the States and in Australia, so he speaks English, and it's pretty much a Western game development studio here. But we get to enjoy living in Kyoto, which is one of the most amazing cities in the world. So it's kind of a funny mix.
That's
I
awesome.
would like to get more Japanese staff on board, and we do have contractors that we work with that are Japanese.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I'd like to get to more of a 50-50 sort of space with the studio in terms of West versus East.
Hmm. And just out of curiosity, what brought you to Japan, and is it the job offer from Sega, or what took you to Japan in the end?
Well, I went to college in Japan just on a whim
Hmm.
when I was younger, and then after I graduated from college and did my stuff, I worked in the States for a couple of years in gaming, and I got the job offer at Sega, and I was a complete Sega fanboy, so that was a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Had a great time. Worked on phenomenal projects. Worked on the Space Channel 5 series and on Res and a couple other things that didn't ship. I just had an amazing time. Totally fell in love with Japan. Went back to the States to actually go back to design college to kind of up my skill set because the guys I worked with were so freaking good. It was crazy,
Yeah.
and I knew that this is what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. So I wanted to kind of get better as a designer. Went back to school and then got kind of fell into a job at EA right away in Los Angeles there, and then I just always wanted to come back. So I've been working on it forever, trying to get back to Japan, and we started my own company in Seattle and sort of always had the plan. I was like, all right, we're gonna bring this whole thing to Japan and kind of do it our way and probably settle down here and probably never leave. I love it here.
Oh, that's awesome. A couple more fan questions. I don't know if you want to talk about this, but one person's asking how much the game cost in terms of development costs, and they were talking about retailer price, but I'm not exactly sure what they mean by that one. But I mean, can you talk about a little bit about the development, like financial,
I
by
mean,
any
the
chance?
development is ongoing. I mean, it's millions of dollars. It's millions of
Okay.
dollars, and years of development. I mean, it's been a long road. The retail price right now is $19, 19.99 on both Steam and on PS4.
Hmm.
The mobile pricing and all that stuff is yet to be figured out, and we've got more content coming that we're not charging for, so that's also costing us quite a bit more money. But it is really cool new stuff. It's getting a little long in the tooth. We should have shipped it already, but like I said, we're down to just the one main engineer and the one support engineer. So
Hmm.
um, it's a little bit later coming than we thought it was going to be, but when it does hit, it's going to be super awesome. So please
Yeah.
hold on for that too.
Awesome. Another person's asking a little more information about the game. We talked about it being like a roguelike, so procedural or not, campaign, how long is the game?
So it's sort of a weird thing. It's kind of a new approach we took to this. We kind of had a lot of fun coming up with something that was sort of off the rails. So it is a roguelike, but the roguelike is broken down across 5 seasons of content. Well, 4 seasons right now that are out. Each season is about an hour's worth of gameplay time. But if you play it over and over and over again, it's never going to be the same thing. It's always going to be new.
Mm.
But each one has sort of a story arc, kind of like a TV show, basically. Like each season has its own little story arc with its own sort of set of missions. There's a lot of different dialogue that you'll come across by playing at different times, and the stories are sort of randomly generated in a sense, the micro parts of the story. Um, Altogether, I mean, if you were to sit down and beat the 4 hours of gameplay back to back, which no one does because
Mm.
it gets really hard at the end, it would only be a couple hours long. But most people, I think, take 10 to 20 hours to kind of finish the campaign. And that, again, is just one time through it. If you play it again, it's going to be a totally different thing, and you're going to have all new missions and all new levels and everything. So
Mhm.
it's kind of got a gray end. It's like, how long is the game? It's hard to say.
Okay. And another question for me, is there any Easter eggs or something special that maybe people haven't noticed as much yet, or something that you would like to note out a little bit?
Um, Not really. I mean,
Yeah.
if in this gameplay, it looks like we're all playing the first season here, but where
Hmm.
you just have the ship.
Yeah.
Once you finish the first season, you move into the second season. You gain access to a mech form too, so you transform into a mech, and it becomes much more of a less of a kind of a combat shooter and more of a sort of a physics-driven sort of combat brawler sort of thing. So that's a big change, and some of the people didn't mention that in the reviews. They kind of wanted to keep it a secret, but the game's been out long enough now that I think it's important that people know that the game really matures when you can start switching between the two forms. It's like half shooter and half brawler.
Yeah. No, I remember on the Giant Bomb, I believe, Quick Look, you guys announced or something happened when it was a big surprise for everybody. So that was a cool announcement when I heard about it.
Yeah, it was cool. We I can't believe we kept it secret that long. Everyone was really surprised, but it was the right thing to do, and it was a really fun announcement to finally let that out because we've been watching ourselves for so long. And every demo we made sure we went through and removed every piece of code that would point to any power ups that were mech specific or anything like that. And it was really kind of weirdly relieving to kind of come out and just be out in the open about that.
That's awesome. What was the funniest bug you've seen during development, or maybe even now?
Well, there were some really not funny bugs. There was a bunch of crash bugs that we had never seen before once we shipped that took us a long time to wrap up.
Mm.
Um, I mean, I don't know if any more funny, stuff like where the ending doesn't generate after you finish a mission and you're just stuck in limbo, stuff like that.
Mm.
Sometimes the controls will be backwards. I mean, it's just bugs, game development, especially with a small team and especially with a procedurally generated game like this. There's just always something that no one's ever seen before, and then you release it, and tens of thousands more people are playing it, and they're finding stuff that you've never seen before in 3 years of playing the game. And
Mm.
you got to track it down. And if you can't find it, it's hard to track down, know what it is. So
Are you ever?
again, I don't
Yeah.
know funny as much as harrowing, but we got through it mostly.
I mean, are you ever? I'm curious. Do you ever watch any like Let's Plays or anyone doing a speed run of it? And are you ever surprised by what people discover or what people do with the game?
Yeah, I'll see stuff that I'm like, what is that? How did that possibly, like, that's impossible. I don't know how that could have happened. I don't know how this giant thing could have been stuck in the wall. It spawned outside the wall. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And so, I'll grab the lead engineer. We're watching it. We're like, how does that happen?
Yeah.
How is that even possible? No one has any idea. Um, and it's crazy watching how good some of the guys have gotten, some of the streams. Like,
Yeah.
we were playing it for years, and within a couple weeks of releasing it, people were doing stuff, and I was like, "Wow, look at this guy, man! He's nuts.
That's
It's
awesome.
crazy." The skill ceiling is very high, though, and so to watch some of these really talented gamers get up there and just start competing on that crazy level has been really interesting.
Very cool. A couple more questions from the stream. The UI, of course, is very inspired. That's one of the things most people talk about with the game. Uh, what inspired certain elements of the UI, whether it's the pause screen or obviously the cutscenes and whatnot?
A lot of things. I mean, I think the overall tone of the aesthetic was sort of this thing's based on like this '80s space anime, and so getting some of that VCR stuff and some of that old school sort of the arcade boot up thing for the 17-bit logo, and like that kind of a lot of aesthetic callbacks to that era.
Hmm.
Then the UI itself was just meant to be. I mean, the game is so fast paced and intense that you don't have a lot of time to like look at really small, UI details everywhere. So stuff had to kind of pop up and really be in your face, and it's just a lot of experimenting and a lot of playing and a lot of tweaking and tuning and just spending a lot of time and passion on making sure that the game read and was easy to understand for people to jump in and just start enjoying themselves. So that's something that we really pride ourselves on and we take very seriously.
Very cool. And then one last question from the stream. What's next for you other than the mobile version and any patches? Do you have any other ideas of what you want to do next?
We are starting work on our next sort of series or whatever you want to call it, our next title.
Mm.
It's way too early to talk about yet. The mobile stuff is going to be an ongoing thing, and we're hoping to be able to pump out new content and kind of keep adding to that. Um, and what else that means, if we're going to be doing more Galak-Z for PC or for PS4, all that stuff is sort of yet to be decided. We're a small crew, and we're really busy. We're kind of juggling with a lot of prototypes and a lot of different ideas right now.
Mm.
So it's just kind of too early to talk too much about anything else right now.
Okay, for sure. I guess last question is, do you have anything you'd like to say to people that have played the game so far, or to fans of 17-bit?
Uh, the DLC that's coming soon. I mean, it is wrapping up. We're kind of putting on the final buttons on everything. Is super awesome. It kind of offers a different way to play the game, and I think it'll offer a lot of long term playability for fans of the game, and hopefully offer some new elements. Once we announce it, you'll see what I'm talking about. But it's very cool,
Mm.
and so we sort of apologize for the delays. We kind of moved the rest of the main crew of the studio over from Seattle to Kyoto, and so getting everybody set up and kind of hiring some new guys and getting people ramped up and stuff has been taken a lot longer than we thought to get stuff done. But we are still cranking on it, and it'll be worth the wait, I think. So
Very cool, and we'll be looking forward to it. Jake, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on your D.I.C.E Award nomination, and of course, the game is available, like you said, on PC, PS4, and soon to be mobile. Correct?
mobile's not soon. It'll be probably towards closer to the end of the year, but it is coming this year. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Again, thank you for the time so much. We really, really appreciate the opportunity.
Cool. Thank you very much. It's
All
been a
right,
pleasure.
no, for sure. And guys, this will be archived on YouTube in case you want to view it again or share it with anybody. Just look to our Twitter for more information. And again, thank you for watching. Thank you, Jake, and thank you, everybody. Until next time, we'll see you guys
Cool.
soon. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye, guys.